there's a couple types of bankruptcies. What happens if they hire you for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy?
Okay. Well, and before we do that, I just want to be clear. I will never tell someone I told them so. A lot of times when that situation that you mentioned happens, and it does happen, they come in saying, "You told me so, and I should have listened." But I wouldn't do that to somebody. And we're not going to file if the pros don't outweigh the cons to doing this. We're not going to do it. I mean, if it's going to create more pain than it is help, we're going to find something else. But yeah, if someone comes in and we go through the options and we land on Chapter 7 bankruptcy, what happens next? Well, let's talk about what Chapter 7 is first, okay? So when you file Chapter 7, what you're doing is you're asking the bankruptcy court to just eliminate certain debts. Okay, the word we use is discharge, to discharge certain debts. Debts like credit cards, personal bank loans, payday advance loans, online loans, money owed on cars that have been repoed or leases that were turned in early, money owed on foreclosed homes or through landlord-tenant eviction actions, old utilities, things like that. Those are old cell phone bills. Those are generally the most common dischargeable debts we see. Sometimes IRS income taxes can be discharged if they're a certain number of years old and certain circumstances are present. And then the things that just to get this out of the way, there are certain debts that we can almost never discharge. The big one is, unfortunately, student loans. And the day that changes will make me happy, as well as a lot of other people out there, I'm sure. But alimony, child support obligations, we can't discharge in bankruptcy. Court fines, like traffic tickets, things like that, don't go away. Unemployment overpayment, that's another big one that we no longer can get rid of. And that's a tough one because they're pretty tough with overpayment penalties. They can be a nightmare. But there are solutions for that too. But so there are certain debts we can't get rid of. But to answer your question, once we've gone through the process and figured out, okay, this is a scenario that's very ripe for Chapter 7, what happens next? Okay, well, obviously we talk about the costs of filing and how that works. We generally don't quote prices on Chapter 7 cases until we've done this analysis, because I found historically when I do that, like if someone calls, and I used to do this years ago, and a lot of law firms still do, and I learned the hard way, and I'm not sure what they're waiting for, but if someone calls me and says, hey, how much for a Chapter 7? I mean, to me, that's almost like calling a car dealership and saying how much to buy a car. I mean, you don't know there are so many different, just different things that can be done in Chapter 7 and different levels of complexity in Chapter 7 cases. I can't quote a price like that until I know more information, because I wind up either overquoting or underquoting, and it's not fair to anybody. And then we start off on the wrong foot, and it's just not a good scenario. It's the beginning of a bad relationship, in my opinion. I don't want people to think when they call me that I'm all about the money first too. I don't want to talk about money until I've created enough value for you to think that my services are worth paying money. Because you may come in here after having been quoted a price over the phone, and you meet with me for 20 minutes, and what if you don't like what I have to say? What if you think I'm not offering any value? Now I got this number out there that really doesn't mean anything. So I want you to understand what it is we can do. I want to be able to show you what we can do. And then only then, if you decide that that's a great idea, we then talk about money. Rest assured, we will make it affordable. And what I mean by that is we offer a number of different payment plans and things like that. I can almost always make it fit. I can almost always make it work. And we can usually file a case for very little money down too. So that's a good thing. So I want to focus more on the service and more on the result than I do on the money, because that's really what you're after, okay? So, but once we've talked about the money and the different payment plans, then we've got that out of the way. Now it's time to talk about what my responsibilities are going to be and what your responsibilities are going to be. I guarantee that I'm going to do everything I can to get you this discharge, to get rid of this debt. I'm going to prepare all the paperwork. I'm going to file it with the court. We're going to file amendments as necessary. We're going to return your phone calls or answer your phone calls when you call. Respond to your emails and texts right away. There's always going to be somebody available to talk to when you call, so that if you have an emergency, in your mind, if it's an emergency in our mind. I want you to be able to reach out to us when you can. So those are the types of things we're going to do. We're going to see your case through to not only discharge, but we're also going to see you into a credit rebuilding program to bring your credit score up to at least 720. So we're going to be with you for a while on this. All right.